Yes.
Mr. Rosa, this is checking. We're checking the audio. Can you confirm?
Good afternoon, everybody. Can you hear me?
Hello. Yes, we can hear you.
Awesome.
Thank you, Mr. Rosa. Good evening. Thank you so much. It is 5:15. Welcome. It is January 7th, 2025, and we are ready to call our meeting to order. We start with our tribal land acknowledgement. In partnership with the tribes who called Phoenix their home first, we acknowledge and respect the land our schools are built on. We commit to being a strong partner with any and all tribal nations who entrust their children to our schools. We are grateful and honored to be partners. May I get a roll call?
Good evening. Roll call for Ms. Jessica Bueno,
Here.
Ms. Erica Ovalle, Ms. Erica de la Rosa,
Here.
Dr. Alicia Vink,
Here.
and Ms. Carmen Trujillo.
Present. Thank you, and please join me in standing for the Pledge of Allegiance. Do we have a recommendation for the agenda this evening?
Madam President, I recommend we accept the agenda as it is written.
Great. I motion that we adopt the agenda as presented.
This is Carmen Trujillo. I'll second.
Thank you. May I get a roll call?
Roll call for Ms. Jessica Bueno,
Aye.
Ms. Erica Ovalle,
Aye.
Ms. Erica de la Rosa,
Aye.
Dr. Alicia Vink,
Aye.
and Ms. Carmen Trujillo.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you. With that, our agenda is adopted for this evening's meeting, and we're moving on to nominations of board officers for calendar year 2025. The first item I have is nomination and election of the governing board president for calendar year 2025.
This is Carmen Trujillo. I'd like to nominate Jessica Bueno to remain our president for the governing board.
Thank you, and I would like to accept the nomination.
This is Alicia Vink. I would like to nominate myself for board president. I believe my expertise in education, connections to our community.
I'm sorry, we have to go one nomination at a time. No, I'm sorry, you're right.
Okay. And experiences as a mom with a child in our schools are vital as our district moves forward with reimagining our future.
Okay, you accept your own nomination? Okay. Thank you. With that, we need a motion for either nomination.
I'm sorry. Can you explain then how the voting is going with multiple nominations? I actually don't remember doing this with more than one and
Yeah, that's
wasn't
why I was
thinking it
trying
would go
to
this way.
say it's one nomination, but I think it made sense to have like two nominations. And then that's why like on the floor you put which nomination will get seconded. Because we have two candidates right now for the position of the board president. So then we need a second, we need a motion to adopt which nomination would get voted on. Does that make sense?
I looked it up and that's not how it went, so I just didn't see it going like that. I saw it going where it was the nominations and then it was like a roll call vote.
But what would the vote be on? Because there
It-
needs to be a motion
the-
on which, like,
Y-
right? Like, so there
It
needs to be
was
a
a-
motion on which, on the nomination and then the vote, right? Because you can't just vote and say like, I vote for this or I vote for that. It has to be like a motion that is the vote.
The vote is for the president. The way I watched it
Okay.
is that people would say they're the person that they're voting for.
Okay.
But I don't, the way that you're describing it is that only one vote would happen. Is that, or two separate votes will happen?
Well, no, because we have two nominations, it's a matter, so you're right. So two votes could possibly happen, but it's like if there's two nominations, then we have one motion on the floor for one of those nominations. Does that make sense?
I'm just not sure how it goes Robert's
then-
rules wise, but if that's how it goes, then let's proceed.
Okay, so then based off of your experience, it's been that the vote is to clarify which nomination is the vote for?
I'm sorry. I don't have experience with two candidates. What I watched in preparation, because I checked our policies and our board operating procedures and didn't see it explained, was that we would call for a vote and each member would say a person that they are voting for of the nominees.
Okay, well, we can do that. We can call a roll call to vote for which of the nominees. So the nominees first is President Bueno, and the second nominee is Dr. Vink. Can I get a roll call? Did you get all that? Okay. Okay, we got to close. Is there any other nominations? We can close the nominations for board president and we can move to a roll call. Yes? Okay.
Roll call for nominee, Ms. Jessica Bueno,
I vote for myself.
Ms. Erica Ovalle,
Jessica. Oh, or I said Jessica.
Ms. Erica de la Rosa.
Vote for Jessica Bueno as president.
Thank you. Ms. Carmen Trujillo
I would like to vote for Jessica as president as well.
and Dr. Alicia Vink.
For myself.
Thank you.
So with that, the outcome is that I am selected as president of the board. Okay.
Correct.
Thank you. With that, we're moving on to nomination and election of the governing board vice president for calendar year 2025. And I would like to nominate Ms. Carmen Trujillo to be the vice president. Do you accept this nomination?
I do. Thank you very much.
Do we have any other nominations for vice president?
I would like to nominate Ms. Ovalle. I'm sorry, I didn't say your name correctly. I know that she is a new governing board member, but I understand that she is taking this office very seriously and has already attended several professional development trainings for the governing board position. And she has young children attending our schools. And as we move forward in reimagining, I think that it's really important to have a board officer like Ms. Ovalle. So I nominate her.
Ms. Ovalle, do you accept the nomination?
Sure.
Okay. Can I get a roll call for the nominations?
Roll call for Ms. Jessica Bueno,
I vote for Ms. Trujillo.
Ms. Erica Ovalle,
I vote for myself.
Ms. Erica de la Rosa,
I vote for Ms. Trujillo.
Dr. Alicia Vink,
Ms. Ovalle.
and Ms. Carmen Trujillo.
I vote for Carmen.
Thank you.
Thank you. With that, we confirm Ms. Trujillo to be the vice president. Thank you all for the nominations and interest in becoming a board officer. This is part of our board organizational meeting that we must conduct every year after an election year. This position is for a full year, calendar year. So thank you. And we're moving on to current events. C1, Superintendent's Report.
Good evening, everyone. Excuse me. Congratulations to our new board members and our new board president and vice president. It's wonderful to have Ms. Ovalle joining us as one of our new board members. In 2025, it is a new year and a time for reflection and optimism. It's a time for goal setting, establishing our intentions, and new opportunities to be our best selves. And yet, we also know it's a time of uncertainty for many of our families. I want to reassure our staff, students, and families, that our schools are safe places for every student. Your site and district leaders are committed to working together to ensure our students are free to learn and to live up to their greatest hopes and dreams. I'm proud of the commitment of our governing board to ensuring our schools are staffed with the personnel, including nurses, social workers, qualified teaching staff, extraordinary leaders, all working to support the higher achievement of every student. Later tonight, you're going to see the gains that many of our students are making in math as we are able to hear about the strategies that our teachers are using to get these results. We also know that student success rests in the hands of many people, beginning with our families, our bus drivers, child nutrition workers, custodians, maintenance teams, our front office staff, school leaders, support staff, including IAs, specials teachers, interventionists, coaches, and every person who directly provides instruction to our children. All the people who support them through our district offices to provide benefits, salaries, and a positive work environment, and to our cabinet that oversees all of these areas and works tirelessly to ensure that Phoenix #1 is a great place to live and learn and grow together. As I reflect on the people around our district who are focused on improving student outcomes, I am confident we will see continued growth in our students, and together we will overcome the challenges we face while ensuring every child has a school that welcomes them and helps them grow in a safe, nurturing, and loving environment. Thank you to all of you who helped to make this true. Let's make this a wonderful year for every student and every employee and every family and community member. That concludes my comments.
Thank you. Moving on to board members' reports. Do we have any reports from board members? Go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I want to give a huge warm welcome to Erica Ovalle for being here and starting her term as a governing board member for Phoenix Elementary, School District #1. I'm so proud to serve with you. It's also January is School Board Member Recognition Month. So I just want to thank all of everybody up here for the dedication and for the commitment given to this volunteer role to our kids and making this district as strong and just the best that it can be. I feel like we're on a pathway to that very thing. And I'm just grateful for all of the good hard work that's going into this, all these changes that we have coming. So I just wanted to say thank you. And to other board members out there too, not just these ones. Thanks for all you do.
Thank you for that recognition. And my board report is, again, just welcoming everybody back to this next semester. I hope everybody was able to enjoy their time off. We welcome students back today. Thank you to all our staff that yesterday was preparing for our students' return. I think it was smooth sailing. I didn't hear there was any mishaps, but we're ready to get this next semester started. 2025 is going to be a very great year for us, and we're excited to continue to serve our community in this capacity. Thank you all for being here today. That concludes my board report. I just want to open up again to Ms. Ovalle if you want to say anything to the community and just introduce yourself as our newest governing board member.
Is this thing on? I'm just kidding. What's up, everybody? Thank you for having me. Thank you for even having me in this position. It's an honor and I'm very humbled. my son attends one of the schools here, Hurd Elementary. And so I started to get involved because he has an IEP, so I want to make sure that all families feel welcome and have resources for other kids. I also relate very much with the population in which we serve. And so hopefully that experience plus the youth work that I do with formerly incarcerated youth will all come into play in this work. So I really look forward to it. I'm here to serve children and families first and foremost before anything else. So feel free to reach out, get in touch with me, talk with me. I'm open to hear everything. So thank you for having me. And again, I'm truly humbled.
Thank you. Thank you for being here with us. And that concludes our board reports, and we are moving on to D, student outcome focused governance, D1. Thank you. If you're not familiar about our work and what we've been focused on, we have adopted a student outcomes focused governance model in September of 2022. And here is just, we ground ourselves in this work. And so here is just a grounding presentation of like what we have been working on. We believe that student outcomes don't change until adult behaviors change, or said differently, when placed in the context of governing, patterns of behavior that are exhibited in the boardroom can reasonably be expected to be found paralleled in the classroom. The intention of the governance framework is to translate existing research and the collective experience of dozens of board members and superintendents into a set of tools that boards can use to identify what's working and what's not working, as well as to track progress along their journey toward improving student outcomes. Next, the governance model has 6 competencies, as you can see. The competencies describe board behaviors and the degree to which they create the conditions for improvements in student outcomes. First, we have vision and goals. The responsibility of the board is to carry out the vision of the community. School systems exist for the reason to increase what students know and are able to do. Second, we have values and guardrails. In governing, board members represent the vision and values of the community, and they rely on the superintendent to determine how to accomplish the vision while honoring the values. 3, we have monitoring and accountability. Boards may adopt goals, but the effective use of time monitoring the goals are a skill the board needs to develop in order to hold the educational system accountable. 4, we have communication and collaboration. The board will lead with transparency and include stakeholders in the pursuit of the goals. 5, unity and trust. The board will lead with one voice in its pursuit of the goals. And 6, continuous improvement. The board must be dedicated to the cycle of continuous improvement by paying attention to what's working and what is not working. Next. As you can see, we have our 4 board goals. They're also posted up here in the governing boardroom. As you can see, our first 2 goals are around our early childhood literacy and mathematics. Our 3rd goal is focused on our English language learners, and goal 4 and 5 are focused on our mathematics literacy and middle school mathematics literacy and mathematics. Then we have, so the purpose of the goals, as you can see, if you can go back real quick. You can see our goals. They're SMART goals. So as you can see, we have where we started and where we intend to go. So where our goals are very time bound, very goal oriented, so we can see exactly where we started and where we're headed to. Next. Then we talk about our superintendent guardrails. So as you can see, there's 5 guardrails that allow the superintendent to also focus on what is important to the community. So while we know that our student achievement in academics is the main priority of our school district, we also have guardrails where there's other areas of focus that our superintendent needs to focus on. And we have adopted 5. Next. You'll see that we have, the board also has guardrails as well. We adopted 5 that you can see and read, that what the intention behind the guardrails is to make sure that we as a board understand what our role is and not to interfere with the direction that the superintendent is leading us on. And And tonight, we will be hearing about our board interim goal number 2, which is our early childhood mathematics. And we have board interim goal number 5, which is our middle school mathematics, and our superintendent guardrail 5, and our board guardrail 5. So I will pass it over to Dr. Gonzalez.
Thank you, Madam President. So our goal 2, we'll start with our early years mathematics goal is goal 2, and you can see the interim goals that were adopted by the governing board earlier this year. Interim goal 2.1 and 2.2 are the goals that we will be reporting on tonight. 2.1 is increasing the percentage of first grade students in our focus schools performing on grade in math from 10% in the winter of 23-24 to more than 19% by winter of 25-26 as measured by district winter benchmarks and curricular assessments. Interim goal 2.2 is similar, but this is for our second grade students in the focus schools, improving on grade in math from 6% in the winter of 23-24 to more than 15% by 25-26 as measured by district winter benchmarks and curricular assessments. So if we look at the next page, you can see where this goal was actually established when the board first adopted the student outcomes focused governance. Our goal for goal 2 is that the percentage of third grade students with a pass rate on math as per the AASA will increase from 29% on August of 2023 to 54% by August of 2028. You can also see the breakdown in terms of how students are performing based on their demographic and their federal program cohorts and what the annual targets are for each of these different goals. And so as we move on to the next slide, we're going to, pardon me? As we move on to the next slide, we'll be able to hear from Dr. Lloyd and Dr. Galetti and potentially from Ms. Brown and Mr. Hanson as we look at the work that's happening in our school sites. So for this data, we're actually looking at the progress that has been made in first grade from the beginning of the school year where we established a benchmark to a baseline to where we are performing currently. And I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Lloyd to share the data with you.
Thank you, Dr. Gonzalez. Members of the board, welcome Ms. Ovalle to the board, and congratulations again on serving as board officers, President Bueno and Vice President Trujillo. And thanks again to all of our board members for serving. I know that is a sacrifice from you for your community and also your families, so thank you. I'm just going to give a quick orientation. I know Ms. Ovalle, this may all be new to you, so I'm going to quickly go over the slide and what's in the different slides as we present them to try and help with that orientation and the understanding of what we are looking at. So as was already explained, goal 2 is around early math. And for interim goal 2, we selected 3 schools this year, Dunbar, Emerson, and Lowell, who we've noticed in trends in their state data and in their benchmark data need additional focus in this area. And so those schools, we took the data from those schools and we looked at the past data and we set a target for those 3 schools as a combined aggregate or a collection of those schools. And so those are the data that we're presenting on right now. And the goal for this is actually from winter to winter. And so we're looking at how we've done in each of the prior winters compared to this winter and going towards next winter. And really it's a mid-year benchmark, I should clarify. So usually it's administered in December or January. And you see a couple different things. You have the goal is spelled out in the gold bar at the top, and then you have a line graph, a line chart at the below that and to the left. So that line chart, what that is indicating is that at this point in time, compared to last year, in winter of 23-24, where we only had 10% of our students on grade level. We are now at, wow, it's so small on my, we're now at 14%, or no, 10%. My apologies. We're at 10%. So it has stayed the same as last year. So it's not improved. We did not hit the target for this year, 15%, that we are shooting for. And so that is why you see in our on-track rating there, right below that chart, that we did not meet our interim goal 2.1 for this year at this point. And that's why we have those pivot points below. To the right, we have a table that breaks down the information for the groups that have more than 10 students. We don't report less than 10 to protect confidentiality and privacy of our students. And so you'll see if there's less than 10 students, it just has that less than 10 designation there. If there's more, then we designate in the first column what group we're referring to, in the second, the number of students, and then we're showing the percent on grade from the fall and the percent on grade from the winter. And then in the last column is what the target is that we were trying to reach. So for every group, you can see they each had their own target if they had more than 10 students. And in this case, both the line graph and the table are showing that we haven't hit that target. And the table shows that we did not hit it for any of our groups at this point either. The red indicates that we weren't very close. It would be yellow if it was at least 80% of the way, and it would be green if it met the target for this year. And in this case, they're all red because they're below that 80% threshold of the target that to indicate that they're close. I should point out too, as we're looking at these data and we're talking about these 3 schools, that it's a fairly small sample size. You'll notice if you look in the table, we're talking about 77 students. So in our first grade classrooms at those schools, you know, they're small numbers most of the time. In our first and second grade classrooms at these schools, we only have 1 teacher. In one case, we have 2 where it's split across 2 teachers in second grade. But otherwise, we're talking about 1 teacher at each grade level in these schools. One other thing to point out, in these data, we're looking at first grade compared to last year's first graders. So we're saying that 10% of our first grade students last year were on grade with their math at this point in the year. And this year, 10% of our first graders are on grade level at the winter benchmark this year. So we've maintained the percent of students at grade level for our in first grade. So we're not talking about those same students, but a different set. So those, I just want to make that clarification for board as well as any community members that are watching.
We also have a quick question from Board Vice President Trujillo. Please share some information about our administration's understanding of the gaps that exist between our third grade student groups.
So, and I'll go ahead and respond to this one actually. And Randy, can we go back to the previous slide? There we go. Thank you, sir. First of all, good evening, Madam President, Vice President, Board. It's wonderful to see you all here, to our cabinet and community members. Thank you very much for being here. Vice President Trujillo, feel free to correct me if I'm not answering the question correctly, but I think what we're doing is sort of taking a look at this particular group and in sort of in immediate time looking at the third graders that we have now in front of us. The goal will look at second graders because we're trying to kind of chart where we want our third graders ultimately to end up. But your question is sort of what's going on with our third graders right here and right now. And so that's what I was going to try and answer to. Okay, perfect. So as you can see from this particular slide, we do see gaps between numerous subgroup categories of our third grade students, including students categorized as ESS, ELL, and ELL, thank you, as well as students who identify as Latino or Latina and African American students. these are systematic inequalities that we see embedded throughout our grade levels, and it's as prevalent in our third grade students now as it has been in the past. And it is a similar trend that we see throughout our KA students in these areas of students that are systematically not being served as well as they need to be by our schools. So these, as we look at the next data steps as we move forward, we're going to be identifying sort of the interventions and strategies that we're working to sort of overcome these systematic inequalities. But those particular groups are areas of focus for all of our schools when we talk about the subgroups that they're particularly looking at, which are our ESS students, our emergent bilingual students, and in some cases, African-American students and Latino or Latina students that we're strategically trying to ensure that they are reaching the highest level of success. And that is represented in this third grade group. And you're going to see that again when we talk about the eighth grade group, because you have another question later on about that same, like, how are our kids doing, right? How are the children? And that is sort of the general trend we see in both of those categories. Did I answer your question correctly? Okay.
After looking at this data, and Randy, if you can move back to slide 3. So did you have other points on this that you wanted to?
Just the last point I wanted to make was that although we did not meet our targets, we do see improvement from fall to winter for this first grade group. You can see that in most cases, we made at least a 4% increase. For our Hispanic, we made a 9% increase for the students who are African American. So we are seeing some increase. We're not at the rate that we need to be to hit our goals at this point. So I just wanted to make that last comment.
And President Bueno had a question. What is the percentage of teachers that have been in the profession 2 years or less?
I think it was
5 years or
5 years or less.
5 years, thank you.
So yeah, for this group, for the teachers in this group, it was 66% of those teachers have been in their profession for 5 years or less as a teacher.
This is first grade teachers, right?
First grade teachers, yeah.
Thank you.
So our next slide is looking at our second grade interim goal 2.2. And here you can see we did meet this target goal. And I'm going to let Dr. Lloyd talk a little bit more about what we see with our second grade here.
A little bit more, but not as much, I promise this time. So this slide follows the same exact format as the first slide that we just looked at. And so you can see in our line graph, we've got the green check, right? Indicating that this year, our second graders, our group of second graders at these specific schools, Emerson or Dunbar, Emerson, and Lowell, had 13% of their students who are on grade level by the winter benchmark. And that's up from 6% of second graders at those schools last year. So we hit the overall interim goal 2.2 for this year. And you can see in our data that if you go over to the table now, that we didn't meet the goal for African American students, but we were close for our Hispanic students. And we did meet for our EL, which is why that's green, and we were close for free and reduced lunch. And overall, we met the goal when you look at all students as a collective group.
On our next slide, you can see the breakdown then as we begin to look at the focus schools compared to all of our other schools. And the good news here is that you can see our focus schools are showing a high degree of improvement in most cases. And I'll turn it over to Dr. Lloyd to talk a little bit more about that.
Okay. One other thing, I know we do a fantastic job of using acronyms that are not common knowledge to the public. So Randy, if you go back just for one quick second to the last slide. So in that table at the bottom, you see ESS and EL. Seth even talked about exceptional education. When we're talking about that, that's actually students with an IEP that receive services and they have an individualized education plan. They're part of our exceptional students who receive services. and the EL indicates those students receive language services, English language services. Just want to make sure that was clear. All right, onward. In this slide, we have one table, and now we're seeing the breakdown of all of our schools in relation to our first grade. I've highlighted in orange there those focus schools again, so you can see their specific percentages pulled out of that overall aggregate that they had before, right? So now you can see them just by themselves. And so we see that we have, again, our red, green, and yellow. Red indicating that they didn't make at least 80% of their target. Yellow meaning that they made 80 to 99% of it, and green if they were at 100% or more of their target, met or exceeded their target. So as Dr. Gonzalez said, we have several celebrations. Dunbar met their goal, as well as Edison, Herrera, Kenilworth, Magnet, and Whittier. And we had several others who were near their goal. We had Emerson, Garfield, Hurd, and Shaw, who were all at least 80% or higher, made 80% or more of their progress towards that target. And so although our focus schools were still below the target that we set for them, we do see some improvements, especially when we break it down at the school level. And was there anything else, Dr. Ailshire, that you wanted to add about this slide?
I think you covered it, sir.
Okay.
Yep.
And so as we look at the next slide, again, you can see this is for our second grade students on grade level, following again the same format that Dr. Lloyd just shared, and the color coding is the same. Again, celebrations for our focus schools with, in most cases, making the progress that we are anticipating or exceeding the progress that we were anticipating.
Yeah, so here we see we can highlight Dunbar and Emerson. Those are two of our focus schools. They both met their goal, and Emerson, in fact, doubled the target that was set for them. And then we have Hurd and Magnet, who also met their targets, and then Herrera and Shaw, who were close to theirs. And so that with those percentages for our focus schools, they're actually above the district average of 12%, as you can see, which that's really the point of trying to have focus schools, is so that we can allocate additional resources and support that ensure that they are growing at or above the district average to support the improvement that we hope that they have over time.
And so that leads to Vice President Trujillo's question. Is there anything more specific to share about what's accounting for the growth shown in these interim goals? And we'll have Dr. Galetti speak to this.
Good evening, President Bueno, Vice President Trujillo, and members of the board. So there are many things that we have been working on in collaboration with our school leadership teams around math specifically. We've had iReady consultants out. iReady is the math curriculum that we use here in Phoenix L, and we've had them out strategically to work with our teachers at these focus school sites, along with their leadership teams and our district math specialist, Susan Brown, who will be sharing with you in a few moments some explicit examples of the work that they've been doing. They've been out several times to work with our schools and our focus schools specifically. Things that they've been focusing on during that time has been small group instruction, use of hands-on learning strategies with math manipulatives to help develop that conceptual understanding of the math that they're learning. They're also working together with teachers to increase reading and writing within math so that they are using their language skills and practicing that both in reading, writing, and discussion as well. They're also helping teachers to be okay with that productive struggle. So when students are learning new math concepts and might be struggling, how to kind of help support them during that time to help build their confidence and their perseverance and their curiosity with the math that they're learning. Our CNI team also has school support teams that are working collaboratively with their site leadership teams to provide that ongoing support and help support the professional learning that's happening at those school sites. So this approach really, along with the master teachers on the campuses, the LASs, the school site leadership teams, the principals, and our district CNI department. Susan Brown is our district math specialist. She's been in the district for a long time, but she's new to the role this year as our district math coach, and she's doing a fabulous job really working hard with our schools to provide some really strategic support in between those iReady consultant visits. So I'm going to have her come up and share a couple of brief examples of some of the work that they've been doing. Good evening, governing board members. Oh, I'm nervous. I've never done this in my 22 years at the district. So I'm just going to read some comments that I put down. So for example, at Dunbar, myself and their team, leadership team and their collaborative team members, LAS, have all been working during those meetings to look at how they're using their student diagnostic data and also student work within the classrooms in order to help the teachers form the small groups. And during that small group instruction, they're really targeting the skills that the students need for their prerequisite learning, for the current lessons and the standards that they're working on. Also how to encourage the teachers and the students to be using their hands-on manipulatives during that time as well. This has been able to increase the teachers' confidence in their ability to meet their students' math needs in order to help them master their grade level standards. And we also just had the iReady consultant out today at Dunbar, and a lot of great work happened in conversation about learning progression standards and supporting students with their needs, because the recent diagnostic data is very current.
And that concludes our presentation. Are there other questions from the board?
Madam Chair, I do have a quick question. May I ask how often the meetings happen? Are they regularly, or like, do the schools need to call and ask for that assistance, or is this like part of the team meetings that go on regularly?
With our consultant visits, each of the focus schools will get 2 visits for the school year. In between that, I'm working weekly with the leadership teams and the collaborative team meetings in order to provide that support in between.
So it sounds like it's ongoing and consistent at all the schools. Okay, great. Thank you very much for the clarification.
Thank you. Is there any further questions for item D2? Hearing none, I motion the approval of student outcome focused governance progress monitoring report of board interim goal number 2.
This is Carmen Trujillo. I'll second the motion.
Roll call for Ms. Jessica Bueno,
Aye.
Ms. Erica Ovalle, Ms. Erica de la Rosa,
Aye.
Dr. Alicia Vink,
Aye.
and Ms. Carmen Trujillo.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you. With that, our motion passes, and we are moving on to D4, discussion on board interim goal number 5.
Thank you, Madam President. And now for Goal 5, we're looking at middle years mathematics. So transitioning from first and second grade, the goals, interim goal 5.1 and interim goal 5.2 are focusing on our 5th and 6th grade students. So in 5th grade, interim goal 5.1 is moving from 16% in winter 23-24 to 25% by 25-26 as measured by the district benchmark and curricular assessments. And for interim goal 5.2, increasing sixth grade student percentage in cohort 27, performing on grade level from 11% in winter 23-24 to more than 20% by spring 2024 as measured by district benchmarks and curricular assessments. And I want to point out a key difference in this. In the previous data, we were looking at a grade level performance. Now we're watching the cohort because we want to see how these students progress over time. So with that, we'll go ahead and move into the next slide. And again, invite Dr. Lloyd to give us some information about the data that you are looking at.
And I understand that this is a fire hose. So Ms. Ovalle, and if anyone else would like a refresher on where these data come from, right? How we assess what the measurement is that we're using, how it works, or anything else, I'm here to help with that, as well as give a lot more data, a lot more information. A lot of it's already in board docs as well. I can go for hours. Don't worry. Just let me know. But I won't tonight for brevity's sake, and so that we can continue on. If we're looking at this slide is again going over our goal for 8th grade and what we're trying to improve, and it's why we have set these interims to try and improve in our prior grades, so that as they move up into 8th grade, they are able to improve and reach these targets. So if you can go to the next slide. And here we have our interim goal 5.1. Again, we're talking about focus schools, and in this case, it's Capital and Herrera. They were selected again because of prior year's state assessment data in 8th grade, 7th grade, 6th grade, and the upper grades, as well as some of their benchmark data. So although you may see and notice they have higher targets in some cases than other schools in these interims, looking at the historical data, we selected these schools, as well as because we knew that they would be good candidates for receiving some of the supports and services, additional supports and services to improve in this area. So in the case of 5th grade, this cohort, when we're looking at the line graph, we are seeing how they did in 3rd grade in winter of 22-23. Only 4% of these students in 3rd grade were on grade level at the winter benchmark. In 4th grade, that grew to 16% of the students at Capital and Herrera in 4th grade, were on grade level. And now this year that they're in 5th grade, our target was 22%. I forgot to say, whenever you see the yellow or the gold, whatever color that looks like to you, those are our targets. So our target was 22%. Our actual was 14%. So the percent of students now that they're in 5th grade who are on grade level has slightly declined to 14%. Obviously, that is not the trajectory we want to have. And that's why you see in our statements at the bottom, the pivot points that we are working on to try and make some changes. Again, if you look at the table on the right, you'll see red, indicating that we weren't close either within different groups, disaggregates of these data. We did have some improvement again from fall to winter, but definitely not enough for the targets that we're trying to reach at this point in time. We also, you might notice that we did not have any improvement for our students who receive special education or exceptional education services or English language services in this group of students. And one more note, when we're talking about Capital and Herrera, again, these are just 2 of our schools, and both of them have about 2 teachers per grade, have 2 teachers per grade level, which is around 95 students overall in the data that we're presenting here.
And that helps to lead into Vice President Trujillo's previous question about what is currently happening with our 8th grade student groups. And Dr. Ailshire will speak to that again, because this group is slightly different.
Yeah, Randy, if I could have you go back to that We there? There it is. Thank you, sir. So as we said before, we see many of the same kind of general trends that, and a couple of things, first of all, in terms of vocabulary, and I appreciate Dr. Lloyd's noticing an emphasis on the vocabulary. If you'll notice, and I apologize for this, I did not catch this. You'll notice here that in opposed to ESS, it says exceptional services. For that particular subgroup, that is ESS students. It's just not the abbreviation. The other one you'll catch there is emergent bilingual. That is another term that we use for EL because essentially they are actually, it's a way to sort of respect the fact that they are actually bilingual students. It is not the state categorization, so we sometimes get we get mixed up. So I apologize for that. We'll be more consistent in terms of how that's measured, but it's the same group throughout. The one point I did want to point out is that when you look at those particular subcategories, that's not small numbers. That's 70 students in the exceptional education services category. That's 90 students in the students that are categorized as EL. So us paying attention to those subgroups is even more important as we move up in terms of those older grade levels. We see larger numbers in those areas. And so while we continue to see, as Dr. Lloyd pointed out, that we continue to see those sort of systematic inequalities for those students in terms of them being able to achieve the same level of success as other students, we see larger numbers of those students in those subcategories that we want to make sure that we're truly paying attention to and providing them the very best opportunities for success.
I'll just say one more thing about this slide. So when you're looking at the percent passing for those groups, those were the percent passing in 2024, in spring of 2024, when they took their last state assessment.
Thank you. And Randy, we'll go to slide 4.
Slide 4 shows us again our data from goal 5.2, which is our 6th grade cohort.
Yes, and I apologize, there is actually a typo on this page in the on-track rating. It says students in 5th grade cohort 2028. That should have said 6th grade cohort 2027. My apologies. Having said that, this cohort as well did not make the improvement that we were working towards. The cohort at this point, only 14% of our 6th graders are on grade level with their math as measured by our iReady diagnostic. And we were shooting for 20%. We did have more students in our Hispanic group who were able to make growth towards that grade level proficiency. So we had 16%, but again, that group is shooting for a 20% target. So they're still below that. And other groups were farther below the targets that were set for them. So again, that's why we have pivot points and plans for the changes that we need to make the second half of the year, so we can change some of the trajectory to ensure these students, all of our students, get what they need.
Is there a question?
I do have a question, Madam Chair, if I may. So going back to my original thoughts about what is going on for our 8th graders, can we hear maybe about what it looks like when we notice certain students are struggling a lot more than other students, like what those interventions or what those strategies and approaches look like to kind of, I don't know if they're individualized like scenarios or if it's like group work. I just kind of would like to know what we do in those instances when we see certain subgroups struggling harder than other ones.
Absolutely. And Dr. Galetti and Ms. Brown are perfect people to talk about that since they're working closely with our teachers in this area.
So to answer very concisely, really all of the above is happening. So yes, we're working on that small group instruction, even at our middle grade levels. And so that is something that the iReady consultants, they're working a little bit differently with our middle grades than our early grades. And we'll talk about that as well. But small group instruction is something that they're still focusing on at those middle grades because of the needs that we have to both address those grade level standards, but also fill the gaps that might be existing for them and give them the prerequisite learning and skills that they need to be successful. So there is that small group instruction happening. There's also the MyPath approach, which is more personalized learning. That's the computer-based program through iReady that really help target students right where they're at to give them the type of learning, the level of learning, and this filling those gaps with those specific skills that they need to support them with that grade level learning. So there's a little bit of both of that happening. We also have an intervention extension period that our schools are using, which they're looking at the data. So the data that Dr. Lloyd is sharing. So they're looking at that, and they're really looking at that even at a deeper level. So that they're looking at it not just at a school level, but they're getting to that student level, and they're really looking at the student level data to determine what are those needs exactly, so that we can then make a plan for those students. So for some of those students, they might be getting the personalized, they might be working individually with someone and getting more of that individualized attention. Others might be grouped. So during that time of the day, students might be doing some different things that are really targeting more of their specific needs. Susan, is there anything you'd want to add? Oh, yeah, come on.
And a recent change with the MyPath for our students that are significantly below in grade levels in 6th grade and up, they have now iReady Pro. So those students have been placed based off of their most recent diagnostic onto a more condensed pathway. So for example, if I'm an 8th grade student, but my diagnostic says I'm at a 3rd grade level, I'd be doing MyPath at a 3rd grade level. But we know that the gaps are so wide that we need to accelerate that. So iReady has now taken the lessons, condensed them into chunks that students work through to accelerate them to get closer to grade level work on their MyPath. So now it's MyPath or iReady Pro, but it's still an individualized pathway for those students.
So now as we move into looking again at how our focus schools are comparing along with all of their partner schools, their sister schools across the district, you can see on slide 6, excuse me, some of the information, and we'll get into what's working, but also what needs more attention, which also comes back to Vice President Trujillo's question.
Do you want me to share a little about the data first? Okay, so here again, you can see there's a lot of red indicating that we had a lot of schools that did not get very close to their target. That doesn't mean that they didn't improve. Most schools made between a 3 to 5% improvement from the fall diagnostic. With a few outliers, we had 5% or more students on grade level at Dunbar, Emerson, Magnet, and Shaw. And Dunbar, Emerson, and Shaw met their goals. And Bethune, Edison, and Magnet nearly met them. And just again, one more time to clarify, probably because you can't say it enough times. In this case, when we're saying that they didn't meet their target, this is target based on these students' previous scores and their previous percent of students who were on grade level in prior years, the same set of students, not a different set of students, but the same set of students from prior years. So I just want to make sure that's clear when we're looking at the 5th grade. We are looking at the cohort and how they're doing over years. And we can go to the next slide. And in this slide, you see some less red. So we had more schools with between 0 to 5% improvement. And the outliers we had were Garfield, Heard, Herrera, and Magnet. I just have to say, wow, and great job to Garfield. They had a 25%, or in other words, 1 out of 4 more students in their 6th grade are now on grade level. And that's great work attributed to the teachers there. So great job. And we had several schools, Bethune, Heard, Herrera, Shaw, and Whittier nearly met their goals, and Garfield and Magnet were able to meet their goals. Our focus schools, in this case, Herrera was close, And we will continue to support them with some of the supports that were discussed earlier. And I'll turn it over to talk more about anything about what is working, what needs attention.
So Vice President Trujillo was looking at the what needs more attention and saw the area targeting attendance and appropriate academic behaviors. And so she was wondering, does this involve a student's skill set and abilities to do things like take notes and get to class? What exactly is included in that area of needing more attention? And Dr. Galletti will speak to this.
So as we know, being present in class is really critical to learning those new concepts and also to connecting that new learning to previously learned concepts. And so we are working definitely to support our families in understanding the importance of the regular attendance. And that's a collective responsibility that we all have, from our district level supports to our school and office level staff, to our classroom teachers, and to our family and community engagement specialists. So there's a lot of support around that to help ensure that students are present and learning the math concepts that they need to be successful. We also know the importance, especially at the middle grades, of developing those academic behaviors and skills that are going to help them to be successful, not just in K-8, but beyond K-8. So as they start to transition to high school, we want to make sure that they have those behaviors and academic skills that they can take with them to high school. So that does include things like note taking, but also participating in discussions, asking questions, and even asking for help when they need it. So asking for that assistance, asking for that support when they need that. So we're really wanting to develop the agency in our students and the ownership of their own learning, so that they are asking for that assistance as they're needing it. So to do that, teachers are teaching some of those things explicitly. So many of them are using tools like guiding them through the creation of math journals. So math journals are things that students can go back. They're taking notes on math topics, concepts. They're giving them examples, and they have that then that they can refer back to throughout the class if they need to. So they're developing those habits, those skills, and those journals also help to reinforce the language that we talked about earlier, that we know is important to develop even in our math classes when they're reading, writing, and thinking about the concepts that they're learning.
And then our last question from Vice President Trujillo. Is there anything more specific to share about what is accounting for the growth shown in the interim goals? And I know we've touched on some of those, but I know there are also more.
And I'm going to start this one off, and then I'm going to turn this one over to Ms. Brown again to provide some more specific examples. But our middle grade math teachers across the district have really been focused on and provided some in-depth professional learning from our iReady consultants. And I'm talking about day-long professional learning, that they're coming 4 times to get that really in-depth learning to deepen their understanding, not only about the curriculum resources, but also about how to support students with best mathematical instructional practices. So it's really not only helped to develop their knowledge and skills as individual teachers, but it's also helped to create a community of math professionals across our district, and a network that they can also reach out across to other schools to get support as well. So some of the things that they are doing in these professional learning sessions, they're focusing on increasing mathematical understanding through the student discourse and the small group instruction, as we mentioned earlier, and the hands-on learning, even in these middle grade years. But also they're really focused around how to scaffold some of those math concepts from prior years during their Tier 1 instruction. We know the importance of giving them that grade level instruction, but we have to also keep in mind during that grade level instruction, how do we fold in those prior skills and standards that they might need to be able to access that appropriately. So again, our approach with our iReady consultant, along with our site leadership, our master teachers, our learning acceleration specialists at the sites, and our district support in CNI. And I'm going to turn it over to Susan, being our math specialist here. She's been working really hard to ensure that the sessions that are being offered are really targeting the data that we're seeing. So I'm going to turn it to Susan to provide some examples.
Thank you. I would have to say that the schools have seen the most growth with their students being able to master grade level standards in our upper grades have been consistently using during their collaborative team meetings, their one-on-one coaching sessions with their master teachers and one-on-one coaching sessions with myself. A document is the prerequisite planning report. It's provided within the iReady resource. That document is really helpful for teachers to be able to identify the priority prerequisite standards that students need additional instruction on before they start a unit and also into a new lesson. This has helped them be successful with being able to meet the needs of the students in time. Also, in addition, our iReady consultant started the year out with our middle grade teachers, and she will be coming back at the end of the year. And in January, they're going to be spending a full day session with myself.
I do have a quick question. Because you led right into where my head was going. So thank you for that very much. I was wondering more so what it looks like when we realize that as our students, some of them that might not have the skill set yet to complete a math journal or have I was wondering what it looks like when we approach children that aren't maybe up to par yet on math journals and all that stuff. What do those situations look like? You kind of touched on it with the one-on-one coaching sessions, I'm assuming.
I think a lot of it starts with the building of the relationships with the students, and our middle grade teachers have done a really great job with building those relationships and allowing the students to feel confident that when they go into the try portion of their lesson, that it's okay. Try something, whatever you have that you can connect to, put that down on the paper first. It's not about right or wrong. It's about taking what you have and then building upon it. So then that discussion, the teacher is going to lead that by picking some of those strategies, putting that up on the board and supporting the students with the questions that they're asking in order for those students to be able to show what they know and to build on that. And then they can get to master that standard. So I think it starts with relationship. It starts with really deep lesson planning and understanding standards, which we've been hitting throughout all of our planning sessions with the iReady consultant. And then when I do the one-on-one planning sessions with strategic teachers.
I love it. Thank you very much. I just wondered what it looked like when we've got to, dig a little deeper to meet our kids where they're at.
And our
I
next
appreciate it.
professional learning session with those teachers, productive struggle, is going to be one of the topics that we're going to hit on at the end of January. So I already have it planned.
I would also just add one thing to what Susan had shared. So one of the 8 mathematical practices that they're really working on is modeling with mathematics. And so our teachers are modeling. So those journals, that note-taking, those that they're doing, it's not just that they're taking notes as the teacher's teaching, the teacher's modeling, providing those examples, and working with them through the creation of those journals so that they have good examples to go back to. It's not just just random. So
Yes, Ms. Ovalle, you had a question?
Yes, I see right here on what needs more attention, using pre-test and post-test. How much testing are you guys doing? So it's this one big test and then there's pre-test and post-test. Can you talk to me a little bit more about that, please?
Yes, and hopefully one of the things that I can help with, and I'm trying to help with in our district, is that test is not the wrong 4-letter word, right? When we are trying to administer an assessment, we're trying to understand where students are at, what they're learning. And that doesn't mean that they have to sit the whole time and struggle for hours and hours on an assessment. Usually for a pre-test, for example, we set a specific amount of time, like let's say 15, 20 minutes that they have to try their best to show what they can do on the upcoming concepts. It's not meant to have them struggle and struggle and struggle and struggle for a long period of time on things that we know they can't do yet, but to see what they can do, to understand where they're at. And then the post-test helps us see, okay, this is what you showed that you could do at the beginning before we did the instruction. And now we can see you can do these things. So look at your progress. And that's super empowering for a student, right? It's one of the most important things we can do for our students is build their self-efficacy or their belief in their own ability to do math, to do school, right? And so that's the power of pre and post tests. And maybe we should say pre and post understanding of where we're at, right? And looking at our development and where we're at in our development and what we need to do to move forward in our development. That's the purpose of those assessments. And usually, again, we if they're using those pre-test and post-test, we try and make sure that it is not detracting from, too much the time that is taken. And even with our benchmarks, there's a lot of guidance, and in our benchmarks, we do have leeway because it's our benchmarks, it's not the state, to help students and say when they are struggling with a problem like, hey, do your best and keep going. When it comes to state assessment, we can't say anything. But in this case, in order to help students move along, and in part because the assessment, the benchmark is adaptive. So if students are getting questions correct, it gets harder and harder and harder until they get them wrong. And they should be getting about 50% wrong, right? And so we have to teach our students the different types of assessments, what they're for, how to approach them, and then what's the information that we get from that so that they understand how they're doing and what their next steps are, as well as the adults. And that's a huge work. It's something it's under the needs more attention part, because many don't understand. It's not just, we don't just use a saw. We have hammers, we have drills, we have many different assessments and ways of using those to help our students.
Okay, I am not good test taker. I'm thinking back to my childhood. I never did well, so it kind of makes me a little worried about, imposing that on children.
Mhm.
So my other question is, what about when children have issues outside of schools, like when they have issues at home and that, kind of they go to school, they're not at their best, they probably aren't going to score the best. Like, what types of resources and support do we have in place for children that we know are, disadvantaged? I know somebody touched on that.
I can go ahead and address this. We are incredibly fortunate to have a social worker assigned to every single school, and a lead social worker and a team of traveling social workers, especially focused on how we support our students and the family needs beyond the school. We also have a nurse at every school so that we can make sure that our students have the health care, dental care, eye care. Those sorts of things are critically important to helping students feel their best. And then our family and community engagement specialists. They are critical components to helping to create relationships with families. And we've done a lot of work lately in trying to help our families have resources that they can use at home. We've started doing fun activities that are fun math and fun reading activities that you can do at home that are more in a game-like setting, but that are building that automaticity in reading and in math skills so that when students come in, they do have a higher degree of confidence in that. And with regard to testing, we do recognize not everyone is comfortable testing, but part of that is the way that the adults structure that test environment for our students. So making sure that we're creating it as an opportunity for students to learn. I was talking to a middle school student recently and asking them about how their end of semester tests went. And the student said, this is the first time I had my teacher actually sit down with me and show me my answers and show me how I made growth from the beginning of the year to now. And so I understand it and I'm excited about it and I feel like I can do better next time. Those are the kinds of testing situations we want to have for students, because if you take a test, you have no idea how you did, it doesn't serve its purpose. And if the teachers aren't using the test to actually say, oh, you know what Deborah needs? She needs more work on understanding number concept. Then if the teacher doesn't know that about me, it doesn't help me and I just continue to struggle. So a big part of what the curriculum team has really been working on is having the teachers not only give the test, but then look at the data. And as we said, student by student, identify what does this student need now to be successful for the next time that they take this, so that we're building their knowledge, we're building their confidence, and we're giving them the tools that they need to be successful.
I add one more thing real quick. One of the shifts we want to make too is that it's not a one and done test with our curricular assessments, those pre and post tests. If a student doesn't show a high level of mastery on a post test, then that shouldn't be the final post-test, they should have more opportunities. The other thing that we want to encourage and work on as well is really it's related to principles of learning design, universal design for learning, where students may need different ways of showing their learning, right? Because yeah, I think when you're thinking of testing, you're thinking of my teacher just stuck this on my desk, it's paper pencil. If I fail this, I get an F in my class. Like that is high stakes, that is high pressure. And you don't even know after you're done, you know, how you did or what you get out of that, right? And so it's very much changing those conditions and providing multiple opportunities as well as for assessing, as well as different ways of assessing to gather the data. If you understand that a student may not be able to do everything paper pencil that they could do verbally or through picture or other ways.
Madam Chair, I have two more questions.
Okay, go ahead.
Let's hope I remember them. Oh, this is not the one I wanted to lead with, but we'll go with it before I forget. Do our students know that they are supposed to get so many problems wrong, like to anticipate that they're not going to know everything on the test?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I would say iReady does a good job. We also try before every diagnostic. I provide teachers with a slide deck, and they're supposed to make sure students understand those expectations, right? Like, hey, you know, and this is really important, right? Like I had a student at one school who told me, oh, that was super easy. In fact, it just kept getting easier. And I said, oh, well, that's because you were getting them wrong. Because as you get more and more wrong, it's going to get easier and easier. And that's not what you want. Right. And so iReady builds into the assessment a little video that students watch. And then we try as well. Really, I think when it comes from the teacher understands, the teacher is able to help students understand the expectations, then that's where I think it's the most effective.
Okay, that helps. And number 2 question, when we do pre and post tests, are they graded and does it go towards grades, or is it literally just for an assessment to see where we're at, to see if we're getting closer to where we're headed?
I can't say there's a universal practice right now.
It might be different everywhere kind of a
Yeah,
thing. Okay.
and it could depend too on the context, right? Like if we're talking, most of the time, the way that I'm seeing them used is like a quick, like 5-question assessment. It's not like a super long assessment. It's a 5-question. And it may not be used for a grade because it's just the teacher checking, seeing where they're at to plan for their instruction. And then the post test as well, that may be used as part of how a teacher determines whether a student has or has not mastered yet a standard. And then they should be using it in a way, we call it as a formative assessment, a way of understanding where they're at to continue the learning, to continue to the development until they get to the stage of mastery that they should be at. And that's what we're hoping, that then they are able to report students to their parents and teach the parents like, hey, they have mastered this concept as part of this standard.
And then they get to know that and feel excited about it and go forward. Okay, thanks for the extra clarification, team. Thank you very, very much.
Any further questions for D4? Go
Yes,
ahead.
Madam Chair, I have one more question. And I probably know this and I can check my manual, but I want to ask it publicly so that way, in case anyone else might wonder. When we have certain subgroups or schools that hit their targets, do those targets change and increase? And then our interim goal stays the same? I wonder if we go back to the drawing board on interim goals again, or we do both, I guess. Sorry for the double-barreled question.
That's okay. Our interim goals are set as 2-year goals. So we're tracking their progress in this instance over 2 years. So once they've hit their goal, we do expect them to continue growing and we'll monitor that. But we are monitoring those focus schools because they were below their cohort peers. And so what we really want to see is that given the added resources and supports at those schools, do they make the kind of growth that we want to see? That also helps us to know in the future These are resources and supports that really do help improve student outcomes, and that helps us make better curricular decisions and programmatic decisions across the district. So we don't change our goal because you've already voted on and approved that these are the goals we're working to hit, and then we continue to work to strive to go beyond those goals.
Thank you. Great questions. Moving on to D5, I motion the approval of student outcome focused governance progress monitoring report of board interim goal number 5.
This is Carmen Trujillo. I'll second the motion.
Roll call for Ms. Jessica Bueno,
Aye.
Ms. Erica Ovalle,
Aye.
Ms. Erica De La Rosa, Ms. Erica De La Rosa, are you still with us? Dr. Alicia Vink,
No.
Ms. Carmen Trujillo,
Aye, but she did text that she was going to have to step away, but she would be back. So hopefully we'll get her here in a few minutes.
thank you.
With that, our motion passes, and we're moving on to D6, discussion on superintendent guardrail number 5.
Thank you, Madam President. So Superintendent Guardrail number 5 is the superintendent shall not allow the district to operate without implementing a community-focused plan to mitigate student enrollment barriers. And so this is a goal that is given to me, or a guardrail given to me, but it is shared by our cabinet members. So if you'll recall, when we set this goal a couple of years, or guardrail a couple of years ago, we set an arbitrary sort of indicators that we would use. Now that we had that first year where we have had a chance to look at that, if you look at our theory of action, you can see that we're breaking it down a little bit more so that we understand exactly what the next phase is. So one of the things that, and this was a great question that was posed last year when we were looking at the progress monitoring of this, the question was, how do we know this is what is going to work for the community to remove those enrollment barriers? So our theory of action is that our inputs are, if we survey and identify the barriers to enrollment, provide equitable sliding fee schedules for our families, and study how to improve our transportation issues, that's going to help us better understand what the barriers are that our neighbors and our community are identifying. It will help us provide sustainable programming for families beyond the school day, and it will also help to build efficient routing routes for transporting students wherever they need to go. The outputs of that, of course, would be increased enrollment and families' needs being met in helping to provide supportive attendance in our schools. So the first question comes from Vice President Trujillo. What past information or data was referenced in the production of these strategies and metrics? And so the past information that we used, we went back, and when we look at our ESSER funding and our ESSER work, we used ESSER funds to adopt very specific strategies around early childhood and around providing enrichment and extra activities after school. What we found with that, we did increase our preschool numbers and we increased our K numbers, but it didn't offset, when our 8th grade students are graduating, it didn't create a balance so that, or an excess so that we have increased enrollment. What it did do was level the declining enrollment that we had seen before. So that was part of the information that we used, but now we want to dig deeper to understand what do we need to do from a family's perspective to better serve them and to help make sure that they see Phoenix #1 as the school that they want to send their children to. And so that's part of the reasoning for surveying and understanding what family needs are before we go much deeper. And that's what this set of interim guardrails are about. The next question, does that answer your question, Vice President Trujillo? The next question from Vice President Trujillo is, have other districts' communication strategies and plans been researched for help in understanding gaps and opportunities? And I'm very proud to say that in the Phoenix area, we have a tight relationship with all of the surrounding area superintendents that feed into Phoenix Union. So I'm fortunate to meet on a regular basis with our surrounding superintendents. And also there's the Greater Phoenix Education Metro Council that is, or Metro Education Council, which is a group of superintendents and other education professionals in the Phoenix region who are sharing best practices and strategies that they're using. So that's a great resource for us in tapping into what are you doing that's working and what can we replicate or what can we offer. I'm also pleased to share that our communications executive director, Nicole Baker, has her own group of professionals in the communications areas that she meets with on an ongoing basis. And in fact, they have shared quite a bit of information with one another about different strategies that are working at those. So yes, we are looking to other districts, not only in the local area, but across the greater Phoenix area to understand what are strategies that we can look at. We also are avid readers of research on the national scale. We share that research with our principals. We share that research with cabinet members to understand, just because it's not working in Phoenix, is there a place somewhere else that's similar to us where it is working? And can we tap into that and model that? So as we go to Interim Guardrail 5.1, Interim Guardrail 5.1 says that by May 2025, the district will survey families in the district boundaries to determine specific enrollment barriers they encounter as measured by the development of a community plan to address the barriers uncovered in 25-26. So this year, we're working on the survey, and then from that survey, putting a plan together that will be presented in 25-26 specifically. But right now, we're working on developing that survey. If you look at the next slide, here's an example of what we're looking at. Identifying the survey tools and questions, and I'm very happy to announce that we've identified that we can use our own internal tools to develop a survey tool that will be able to reach our families, that will be a very low cost to us. And thanks to AI, we're able to analyze those data ourselves well, not ourselves, through artificial intelligence, but we're able to get that data and understand how to apply that to create the plans that we need. We've identified our survey audiences and are creating an awareness campaign to administer the survey. The survey is only as good as the people who are responding to it. So if we don't get a good survey turnout, it doesn't really help us. So we want to make sure that we're identifying the survey, the audiences that we want to survey, but also that we have a campaign to get them motivated to take the survey. So in 25-26, we'll receive the findings, establish the district-wide plan, develop and communicate the plan, and then create a quality feedback loop for future iterations.
I have a real quick question about deploying the survey to families. Is it like against best practice to also maybe reach out to the other school districts? As we know, like we really like the open enrollment really causes a lot of that like intersectionalities. Like, do you think that that would be something that is like not okay to do?
I think it's okay to do. I know that in the past we've had sort of a handshake agreement with other districts that we won't poach each other's students. But realistically, we also know that when we look at our boundaries, a lot of students come to us from other districts. So I think it's reasonable to reach beyond the edges of our boundaries to see what are the possibilities that would support students continuing to stay here or to look at moving from their current district to our district if we have a program that supports their needs.
Thank you.
Ms. Ovalle?
Sorry, I'm new at this, but I was gonna say maybe as far as surveying, it'd be good maybe to catch a survey when kids are de-enrolling from school or possibly enrolling in our school, figuring out why they're taking kids out. And I'd just also like to say that I'd be happy to support you in any way on this effort in general. I love it. Thank you.
We appreciate that and we'll take you up on that. Thank you. So as we look at interim 5.1 metrics, we've got the survey planned for release March 7th. It will go March 7th through April 18th. So Ms. Ovalle, this is where we're going to really enlist your support. We'll have community meetings to gather family insights about the schools and the desired programming. We've started that already through the Reimagine process and had 5 different meetings. We've also been attending community-sponsored events to promote our district and to develop new contacts. We're also providing in-house surveying capabilities so that when parents come through, they'll be able to QR code and do quick 3-question responses or 3-question surveys, and then identifying different survey groups to survey current families, current community members and children and current community members with K-8 children, and that can be people driving into or living in the area that are not currently sending their children to our schools. Also reaching out to our business community and community partners. A perfect example of this is with our City of Phoenix partnership and our YMCA partnerships. We've started sharing our our credit donations, our tax credit donations with them. That's also raising awareness with their employee groups about what our schools are offering so that they can think about bringing their children to school here. Interim guardrail 5.2 is that by May 2025, the district will conduct a transportation analysis study to develop a plan for equitable and efficient transportation to support students attending the neighborhood school that meets their specific needs in 25-26. And this has been an ongoing issue with our governing board and with parents with transportation. We don't always have the most efficient routes, and we don't always have the most responsive programming to allow families to get to the schools that they need. So we've been fortunate, if you look at the next slide, to partner with the trust to actually begin looking at developing a transportation analysis study. They've already started that, looking at everything from student safety, driver safety, because driving downtown can be very challenging, cost savings, route efficiency, community walking and biking routes, making sure special populations are attended to, having field experiences that are available to all of our students, and then before and after care enrichment, as well as the start and end times of our schools. So the trust is currently looking at all of that for us, and we should be receiving those findings shortly. That will help us establish a district-wide plan in response, and then developing and communicating that plan and implementing the plan to safely transport students and create a quality feedback loop. So one of the things you're going to see that we haven't always had in the past is a process whereby when we institute something, what's the process to come back and see, is it working? How well is it working? What do we need to do to improve it? So as I said, the trust is working on that, and we are going to have that analysis this month, and then we'll be able to review that data and develop our plan. For interim guardrail 5.3, by May of 2025, the district will secure long-term partners who will provide a sliding fee schedule to ensure all students who need before and after school care and/or sports and arts programming, that they will have access to these at an equitable cost for 2025-26. Our hope, of course, is that we would be able to provide this at no cost, but given our declining enrollment and given the rising costs, we cannot afford to continue to do that without making other drastic changes across the district. So we're looking for partners who are going to help us not only provide these services, but who can also do the background work of providing a sliding fee schedule and working with partners and the state agencies and scholarshiping agencies to make sure that any student who can't afford it has funding to be able to participate, but that families who have some means to be able to support it will be able to support it based on their income levels. And so that's what the sliding fee schedule is. At the end of the day, the plan has to be something that if I don't have the means, I still have a pathway to participate. And that's what this is about. So as we look at this, it begins by identifying those partners. So we've got some before and after school programs. We've begun partnering with the YMCA. We have athletics for K through 8. We've also been partnering with G Road, athletic competitive programs, and then arts, music, dance, drama. I would also love to see tech programs like coding and things like that that can be after school programs that could be district-wide sponsored clubs, events that our students can all participate in based on what their interests are. So in order for us to be able to do that, we need to develop that fee schedule and then start to work with our partner providers in communicating that plan, working with partner providers on program implementation, then making sure that we're recruiting and enrolling students in that so that they don't get scared off when they see that there's a fee attached, because like I said, not all students will have to pay a fee if it's not within their means, and then working with our partners on creating that quality feedback loop. And then we will, the metrics will be the budget analysis, analyzing the attendance in our after school and before school programming. And this is an important note for us. We're currently working on, we have grants. We have 21st Century Learning grants at some of our schools. We're working on applying for those grants for more of our schools this year. The state appreciated the work that we've been doing, and in fact, Capital has been highlighted as an exemplar model for their 21st Century model. So we're applying for those. That will also be a way that we are able to do that at no cost to families. But we're still working with partners at G Road, at YMCA, and Boys and Girls Club to provide services for families. And now it's really about developing new partnerships focused specifically on arts and sports programs. So Vice President Trujillo asked what input from our middle school students and end users could help support our visions and plans in this area. And this really comes down to, for our middle school students, one of the things that we're hearing from our partner providers currently, middle school kids are different and they need very different programming than you would provide for your K-4 students. And so G Road is a great example of somebody who's really targeted the kind of programming you want to see for middle school. It's driven by student wish and student desire and interest. And when you can do that at middle school programming, that makes all the difference in the world. So we want to make sure that in talking with our middle schools, that the students are getting programs that are meaningful to them. So in talking with our Student Leadership Advisory Council, we've also got other student groups, our student councils, talking with them, the things that they talk about are skateboards, design classes. Bethune has an amazing design club after school where the students are all working on different design aspects. They even designed their own t-shirts recently. And if you were at their winter concert, you would see an amazing stage design done by the students in this design group. So those are the kinds of things that the students are saying, I want to see this, I want to do this. I would still love to see folklorico and a mariachi and a coding academy that's all working as a district group of students coming together to do these. There are writing groups that I think we could do. There are just no end to what's possible when we get the right partners to help us. And that comes from talking to our middle school kids. So that concludes my presentation on where we are currently with interim goal 5 or guardrail 5. And I'd like to thank Ms. Sims and Ms. Baker for the work that they've also put into this work. So thank you.
Any other questions? Yes, go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So since time is of the essence, I'm forcing myself to ask this question because I did get my answers, but I would like to dig a little deeper. I'd like to know since we approved these last September, what are we doing now that we've already learned about gaps we needed to close, researched and figured out that we were doing things one way, that we could be doing them another way. Like what are we doing now that we have access to now that we don't have to wait for, I mean, maybe it's informal is where my question is going, and not so much in data that looks at these interims, but pertaining to the actual guardrail. That's where I was really headed with my questions. I'm just wondering where we're going to feel more confident that we're connecting on all opportunities to succeed and while this development rolls out, and I just feel like we're playing catch up, and I just wonder what's going on now to play catch up.
So some of the things that we did informally before this was a formal guardrail, through the community process last year with Reimagine, and then through our community charrettes, and with our staff surveys, one of the overriding wishes that came out of that was after-school programming and enrichment opportunities. And so that was what led to us finding the partnership with the YMCA and with G-Road. And so we started that this year to really in earnest develop this kind of programming for students after school, to refine what we know works and what's going to make a difference. That in turn has led to the realization that a K-8 after-school program is like herding wild cats. And we've got to figure out different ways to structure that. And so both the YMCA and G-Road have been really wonderful partners in recognizing it's not appropriate for K-8 to all be meshed together running on the fields crazy, but instead if we can have very strategic programming in those grade and in grade bands, also around different interest levels. The other thing that came up that we hadn't been doing before with our peer program, we had a competitive sports program, and we still have that competitive sports program, but K through 3, K through 4 students didn't have that opportunity. And so another one of the wishes that had come out was programming for younger students in conditioning and learning the sports, so that by the time they get to middle school, they're not learning the sport and the rules and the body mechanics, but they're able now to play at a competitive level, which then sets them up for more competitive success when they transition to high school. So those are some of the things that we learned and we started implementing based on what we were already learning through last year's work. And we're going to continue to do that. We also know that childcare is an incredibly important aspect for our families. And the more that we can find opportunities to have more children participate in preschool and after-school care, the better it is for our families, particularly for those who are driving downtown. So, but we know that that's a need every family is eager to take advantage of. We learned that when we offer it for free, we have parents who say, oh, I'll sign up for all 5 days, even though they may only use 1 day. And so that's not the most efficient use of staffing, because you can't always predict the number of students you're going to have. And so some days you might have 5-to-1 staffing ratio versus on the days when it's full, you've got a more appropriate ratios. So those are the sorts of things that we're learning that we have to figure out. How do we get tighter about that and more wise in the resources that we're using?
Thank you. Can I ask for an update on the same thing, but for our communication standpoint, like what we've learned works that we're doing and what we learned that we're not doing, that kind of thing?
Yes, and I'm going to turn this over to our expert in this area, because she's done a lot of work in looking at what works and surveying families and our teachers about what they want to see in terms of how they're communicated with.
Good evening, Madam President, Madam Vice President, members of the board, and our cabinet and community. We've learned quite a bit, really just over this last year, about our community and how people like to receive information. So the biggest thing that I've gotten is people want to be over communicated with. And that's been the biggest piece of feedback. So what that looks like is it can't just go one place. Everything we send needs to go to multiple places, and we need to make sure it's accessible. And that's something that we've really been trying to work with. Do we have the right pieces of technology to have accessible communications. And quite frankly, in some areas, we do not. And we know that. And so that's one thing we're looking into changing this year is where are those gaps in terms of, if we send something out, is it a way that you're going to be able to understand it? Because what we've seen in some cases is we'll send a message out and we think it's clear and it's getting to the right audience. And then the front office gets a phone call saying, I don't understand what you sent because it's not in a language I understand. But while they're trying to say that, they're talking to someone at the front desk who doesn't speak that language. And so that's a gap that we know we 100% need to come up with a better solution for. So that way when we send something out, especially if it's something that's critical for parents to know, it gets to them in a way that's going to be easy and accessible, and that we're able to easily and quickly put it in a few different places. So for example, if we're going to do a robocall, we know that chances are you're probably not going to answer the phone because you're at work and it's in the middle of the day and I just sent you a robocall. So can we run quickly a robocall in multiple languages in a few different spots, especially when it comes to starting to survey people? We know that not only does it need to go to all the regular places that we put it, but we need to have stacks of paper laid around. We need to make sure that if there's an event, we have a stack of those at the event so that while you're already here, you're already engaged. We know that you can be surveyed there. Also, another piece of feedback that I've gotten is when we give you things, and this is coming from the community, when we give you things, we want something back. So making sure that we're just transparent in those things, again, especially when it comes to surveying, that we commit upfront to we're going to publish this and then actually doing it after when the time comes. That's a big thing that we got is we don't want to give you things and not know what happens to it. So make sure that if you're going to do a survey, I want to know why we're doing the survey, and then I want to see what the results are after the fact. And so that's something that we need to commit to and make sure we do that in the survey process. So we've learned quite a bit over this past year about how our community wants to be communicated with.
Thank you. And that question came to me over the break, just driving around, looking at our campuses. And so like when our marquees aren't in, I don't know, I know the schools don't have the autonomy to lead those, but I was actually confused, like, okay, the district is closed between these dates. So I guessed that we opened back up today. But I really was a little confused. And then I noticed too that they're not, maybe some are, but the few that I've driven by aren't in both languages. So I just wondered if that's a work in progress, because I know we just hired another translator. I know, those are the kind of things I'm searching for I know we're working on stuff. And so that's why I asked, but I don't want to derail from my guardrail of focusing on the inputs and the outputs at the expense of our students' outcomes. But you've all answered my questions immensely, so I'm super, super grateful for the extra insight.
We do have some updates on the marquees in particular that I know that Ms. Brown would be happy to share.
I'll share early. That is something that we're working on, is turning over the autonomy back to the schools. And so, Merry Christmas. So what we're working on in advance is, putting together a guide of these are the types of things that we should be using it for. Let's make sure that, if we have events coming up, let's put the events on there. Let's put holidays. We can also use it, for celebratory things. And so that's definitely something that's on our radar and that we're working on to be able to, train the school staff to be able to manage those themselves.
Thank you. That's huge. That's so huge. Thank you very
And you
much.
can see Randy is happily nodding.
If those marquees start looking like the Department of Transportation, though.
That's why there'll be a guide. There'll be a guide and there'll be rules, and obviously they'll still be, we'll still be watching them. So we'll make sure that doesn't happen.
I had one question. The sports happening for K4, is that through the YMCA then? They're just having their people play sports with the kids?
We do not have that currently. That's a need that
not
has
currently.
come up
Okay.
through our parenting our parent visioning.
Okay, thank you. I did just want to share my thoughts on all of this for the purpose of the board being aware. I think I shared previously when we've looked at this, and I still feel similarly. I think that we already have enough data to identify our enrollment barriers. I'm still concerned about the impact of our enrollment if we implement a sliding scale, even with scholarships or other hoops that parents have to jump through to get it for free for after-school programs. And I'm concerned about transportation, changing those types of things in the midst of our reimagine plans as well. So not a question, but just thoughts for the rest of the board. Thank you.
Hearing no further questions, moving on to D7, I motion the approval of the Student Outcomes Focus Governance Guardrail Progress Monitoring Report of Superintendent Guardrail number 5.
This is Carmen Trujillo. I'll second the motion.
Roll call for Ms. Jessica Bueno,
Aye.
Ms. Erica Valle,
Aye.
Ms. Erica de la Rosa, Dr. Alicia Vink,
No.
Ms. Carmen Trujillo.
Aye.
Thank you.
With that, the motion passes with majority 3-1, and we're moving on to discussion of board self-guardrail number 5. So board self-guardrail number 5, based on the Student Outcomes Focused Governance Framework, the board establishes guardrails, which are an operational action or class of actions that are usually strategic, not tactical. Guardrails are based on the community's values and should not undermine the school system's ability to meet the goals. Our board guardrail number 5 reads, in attaining the board's student outcome goals, the board shall not focus on inputs and outputs at the expenses of student outcomes. So what we have modeled in today's meeting is that we are asking questions around the progress monitoring of how we are doing on those goals. We heard about our interim goals, which lead up into the greater goals that we monitor throughout the year. And with the guardrails, it helps the board understand the types of questions to ask. So the questions we're asking are based off of the outcomes because it's the administration's responsibility to focus on the inputs and outputs. And let's see. So that's just a reminder of our board self-guardrail number 5. And gonna move on to D9, which is discussion on two-way communication. The community engagement and outreach. Because we've been progress monitoring, we have a year of progress monitoring. Now the board needs to go out and communicate like what those results were. And so when we talk about community engagement and outreach, you know, what is the difference? In SOFG, we make the distinction between community engagement and community outreach as follows. Community engagement is two-way communication between the board and community members that focuses on the community's vision and values, and that occurs at a meeting hosted by the board. Community outreach is two-way communication between the board and community members that focuses on the community's vision and values, and that occurs at meetings hosted by community members. So that helps us understand when we're engaging is that like we're kind of hosting it. So it's at our sites, it's at the different activities that the school district hosts. And when we think of outreach, it's that like we're asking to attend a neighborhood association or like a business meeting. So that is the difference. But with that, we are working on the engagement to inform our school districts of the results that we have done during our SOFG progress monitoring. So I have this on the agenda just to kind of explain like what the intention is, because next month, not next month, our next meeting on the 21st, then we'll be able to schedule who is going to lead those meetings. So for example, we need one facilitator, and then, well, we need two facilitators, so that way we can divide and conquer, and that way we can attend the meetings, not all as a board, not all 5 of us, but like at least 2 over here, 2 over there, that type of thing. So I just wanted to prepare you all that that is the intention for the upcoming semester, is to start doing our community engagements. So at our next meeting, we'll have, and it won't be like, because when we started this process, we literally in February of 2023, we had 4 site meetings every single week. So it was like we knocked out the 15 schools and we had 15 community meetings to understand like what was the vision and values of our community and explain to them what the purpose of this governance model was. And so it was a very big, it was a heavy lift, and that's not the intention behind going to do the community engagement again. It's more so the schedule will be more so that we'll have a anchor site that will host the different schools. So I'm very big on like location. And so luckily, you know, our districts are, it's a very, you know, rectangle this boundary. And that way we can break up the quadrants to be like, okay, Kenilworth is going to host Capitol, Magnet, and Hurd, right? That's the one site for all of them. But it doesn't mean that that's the only time that we're going to actually discuss like what the results are, because then we would also have the opportunity to attend some of the cafecitos or a family resource center. So that's just the intention behind it. So I just wanted to prepare you all to be a little bit more hands-on and attend some of the community engagement, because it's part of the governance model. It's part of us making sure that we're listening to what our community has to say, and while we're responsible for making sure that they understand why it is that we've adopted the governance model and what the results are. So thank you for the opportunity just to share and engage with you all and prepare you for the next meeting and this semester of how we will be able to have our community engagement meetings. Any questions?
I have a question. Since there will be 4 that we've got to attend and choose who will facilitate, can you touch on the preparedness to be able to facilitate these meetings?
Yeah, so I will want to just touch base with each of you to feel like, to see how comfortable you feel like leading that facilitation. And then I'll be able to provide exactly like what the facilitation training will be. And it's just like pretty much just kind of leading the discussion, but just the main part that we're there is just to listen and to communicate like what the results are. So it is something that I will keep you all updated on. No further questions? Thank you. Moving on to community communications. Do we have any electronically?
Yes, we do. We have 4.
How many?
4.
Okay. So this is the time for the public to comment. Members of the board may not discuss items that are not specifically on the agenda. Therefore, pursuant to ARS 38-431.01G, actions taken as a result of public comment will be limited to directing staff to study the matter, responding to criticism, or rescheduling the matter for further consideration and discussion at a later time. And I will allocate 3 minutes for each comment, and we will start off with, I have one in person, and we will start off with our electronic comments. Go ahead.
Okay, our first one is from Ms. April Pettit, and it says the following. Good evening, members of the board, Dr. Gonzalez, and members of cabinet. I am writing to express my sincere appreciation for the invaluable PACTA workday. Returning from an extended break often brought stress and anxiety as there were many tasks to complete before students return. However, thanks to the all-day workday, that stress was non-existent this Sunday. The opportunity to work ahead, make copies, create unit plans, and update lesson plans was incredibly helpful. Additionally, being able to meet with a colleague despite our being on two different campuses was a significant benefit. The gift of time allowed us to collaborate in person, work through various aspects of our unit plans, and make important progress. I want to extend my gratitude to PECTA, the Meet and Confer teams, district administration, and all PECTA members. It is truly remarkable how much a simple yet impactful change can enhance not only my home life, but also improves the quality of my work with students. Having dedicated time to thoughtfully plan has been a wonderful benefit. Thank you again for making this possible. Sincerely, April Pettit, PECTA Secretary and proud music and choir teacher at Whittier Elementary. The next one is from Danielle Carloni, and it says the following. Hello, I just wanted to take a quick moment to thank you all, along with PECTA, and share how much I appreciate the staff workday following winter break. I was able to fully disconnect during break while still being able to plan intentionally to start learning again the day they return. I was also able to reset our classroom and get some much needed tasks done around the classroom for our students. I am always excited to welcome them back, and the workday really does help. Happy New Year, and I look forward to a wonderful second half of the school year. Thank you, Danny Schultz. Our next one is from Emma McEvoy, and it says the following. Having a teacher workday when we come back from break is essential to my progress and productivity as a teacher. I was able to take the entire day to get ahead on lesson planning, readjust to my work schedule, and feel comfortable in the classroom again. If I did not have this day, I would already be behind and panicking, which would negatively impact my students and their progress. Having these work days is beneficial for everyone, and it makes me a better teacher. Next one is from Nicole Goodwin. Hello, my name is Nicole Goodwin, and I'm a proud first grade teacher at Whittier and PECTA treasurer. I want to thank the PECTA and district Meet and Confer teams for giving us the first day after break as a work day. After a busy month of report cards, parent-teacher conferences, meetings, winter festivities, and teaching, it was nice to have a break that I did not have to work through. It was nice to not have to think about my job, relax, and focus on my life and family for a little while. I came back refreshed yesterday, and with an entire day to work, I got so much done. I planned my week, made copies, made data folders, put away the decorations, organized, planned my math for the rest of the year, messaged families on Class Dojo, collaborated with a teammate, and got ready for my small group. This is my 11th year in the district, and this day off after breaks has made a big impact on me. Thank you again for listening to teachers and giving us the time we need to be effective. That concludes the electronic community communications.
Thank you. We have one in person, and I will call up Amy McGrath.
We go. Good evening, Governing Board and Superintendent Gonzalez. My name is Amy McGrath, and I am a Vice President for Arizona State University in Education and the Managing Director for ASU Preparatory Academies. ASU Prep and PESD have enjoyed a fruitful partnership for over 15 years, focused on our shared vision of providing excellent educational opportunities for every student. We've been engaging in ongoing discussions about the upcoming lease end date in good faith that we are working together to find the best solution for all the students, families, and staff that are affected. It's very disappointing that we've learned of the district's intention to cease discussions about the lease extension in May by a public meeting agenda being updated shortly before the board meeting. The very students, families, and staff members that will be impacted by this sudden decision found out in the same way, with no opportunity to have their voices heard about something that's significantly impacting their children and their lives. It's very concerning to me that the district is considering ending the lease without hearing from the students, staff, and community members that will be affected. My request is that you table this agenda item until a later meeting to give time for the issue to be considered more comprehensively. The decision will negatively impact 1,200 students and their families who are fully invested in ASU Prep at the Fillmore location. This decision and its timing is a great disservice to our families without providing an opportunity for their voices to be heard. Thank you.
Thank you. And that is all for community communications. Moving on to consent agenda. I motion that we approve the consent agenda.
This is Carmen Trujillo. I second the motion.
Roll call for Ms. Jessica Bueno,
Aye.
Ms. Erica Ovalle,
Sorry. We're just gonna put it all together. We put it all together. Okay, but we're not voting. Dang, I don't really know what to say because I'm new. So I don't really know what the implications are to everything. I don't know what the costs are. I've never had any internal conversation about it. And so just for the sake of not having enough information, I would also like to table it. So I don't know I don't know if that's an aye or a nay, or I'm sorry. What is it?
The motion is to approve the consent agenda, and so it would be a yes or a no.
I would say no at this time.
thank you. Ms. Erica De La Rosa is no longer connected. Dr. Alicia Vink,
No.
Ms. Carmen Trujillo,
Aye.
Okay, with the 2-2 vote, we do not move forward with our consent agenda. So we need to table the consent agenda, which includes many items, and we will be back at a later time. And moving on to our closing items, we have our board member requests. Do we have any requests?
No, none for me.
Moving on to future agenda items. Hearing none, I motion that we adjourn the meeting at 7:21.
This is Carmen Trujillo. I'll second the motion.
roll call for Ms. Jessica Bueno,
Aye.
Ms. Erica Ovalle,
Aye.
Dr. Alicia Vink,
Aye.
and Ms. Carmen Trujillo.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you. Our next meeting is scheduled for January 21st at 5:15.